A couple of months ago, I began my classes at Chico State University. As I was preparing for my freshman year, I was able to find everything that I needed, except for a laptop. I'm not exactly very good at letting a dollar go for something, especially when I could get something for less. I've scoured the internet for good deals on laptops, finding some ones that suited my frugal habits. Classes were only 2 weeks away, and I was becoming desperate for a computer. Several days later, I saw an ad on a newspaper for a laptop that was being sold for only $600, and it was not far from where I live. It was a very nice Dell laptop too. Something odd as that was being sold for almost 1,000 less than the price store. I drove myself to the seller's address following that day, and the house was farther out of the city, butting up to a dense forest. Outside of the house was an old Chevrolet, and the mass of old signs and other various vintage-looking items. I rang the doorbell, and a thin man in a flannel jacket came to the door. When I asked about the laptop, he almost looked relieved. He told me that he was ready to sell it to me immediately. Luckily, I came in with cash in hand, and after proof of good condition, I went home with the new computer. Excited to have my first self-bought laptop, I powered it up and began uploading my own programs and applications to it. Upon researching and searching for the hard drive, I had found a hidden folder away on it, which was odd because the man sold it to me that the memory was wiped clean and all ready for a fresh start. The folder was titled 09/17/10, presumably the date. I opened up the folder, revealing 6 videos and 3 pictures. Curiosity got the best of me, so I decided to watch the videos. The first video was simply titled 001. The video was shot from a shaky camcorder inside of a vehicle, recording a woman walking out of the bar and getting into her car at night. After a couple seconds, the woman drove off, and immediately the person recording the video began to drive after her. The video ended after 24 seconds, and it almost seems as the cameraman had been waiting for the woman for a while. Come to think of it, I wasn't too alarmed by it at the time, just a little unsettled. I opened the next video file titled 002. I assumed this was the next part of the video. My assumption was right, as it began with the camera on top of the console, facing out the windshield. It was raining now leading to believe this was a short while after the first video ended. I could barely make out that the vehicle had 2 cars ahead, and this one was the same car that the woman at the bar had left in. This went on for unsettling 47 seconds before the camera cut out. I began to get a little nervous, fearing that this might take a turn for the worse. But as if I was watching a television show, I wanted to see what this was ahead. Not totally concerned yet, so I decided to press on. The third video was of course titled 003. This one got me officially concerned. The clip began with the same shaky hands as the first clip. It was now pouring rain outside the car, and I could barely make out a figure in a fur coat with an umbrella walking towards the door of a home. I could only assume who this person was, and whose house it belonged to. The figure then entered the house and closed the door. Following this stillness greatly unnerved me. Not only that this could be heard by the sound of rain dumping on top of the car, but after roughly 2 minutes of this nerve-wracking nothingness, the lights inside the house cut out. Another minute or 2 went by when the camera was placed on the console again, and the sound of the person exiting out of the car broke the stillness. After the car door quietly closed, another figure, this time in hooded, could be seen walking towards the house. I began to feel a knot tightening in the bottom of my stomach as the stranger walked around to the back of the house. Whoever this person was, they definitely weren't supposed to be there. After a couple of seconds, the lights went to outside of the house cut out. It was pitch black, and only the rain alerted me and the camera was still rolling. The video ended after about 9 minutes of rain and darkness. I was now pretty sure that this was not an innocent little project or anything of that nature, and I began to feel stupid for not checking the laptop sister's credibility. Was this person stalking a woman at the same person that I met earlier? Throughout this whole experience, I had a dormant thought of the back of my head that I needed to call the police, but I wasn't ready just yet. Reluctantly now, I began the fourth video, 004. It was dark again, but the rain had stopped, and I was only left with only silence. Not long after that, the clip began, and I could make the sound of footsteps on gravel, getting louder as someone was approaching the vehicle. The car door opened when the dome lights was turned on, and I could tell that the camera was now on the floor of the car, pointing up towards the roof. I heard some fumbling in the background, and suddenly a thump from the back of the truck. An arm abruptly obstructed the camera's view, and a large tarp can be seen pulled out of the car. I only had a scenario running through my head, and I hoped that it wasn't true. The person picked up the camera and put it back on the console and began to back up. They drove for another good 3 minutes before parking off the branched off road and exiting out of the car to work on the load they were carrying. 6 minutes later, the car was moved again and into a different location, and the camera was packed up with carried handed way from the car. I could see now that it was the same shit bucket truck that was in front of the seller's house. I was about ready to call the cops on this creep when the camera then turned towards the house. It was a completely different house than the one I visited. I was a little relieved by this, though it didn't prove anything. The fourth video had come to an end, and I was wondering whether or not I was prepared to see what was to come next. I can only hope that this is a prank, or at least a happy ending. 005 began inside the house. It was extremely dark, and the only thing I could make out was a figure that it would occasionally walk in front of the camera. It was so quiet for the first few moments, minus the occasional barking of the dog outside. Eventually, a small sound started to appear. The small sound soon escalated to loud, muffled scream. Shaking and struggling sound can be apparent as time went on, as well as crying. A light abruptly came on, and the camera was lifted to pan to the center of the room, revealing a beaten and bloody woman tied to the chair. From what I could make out was in fact the woman from the bar. The camera zoomed in on her face what seemed to be eternity before stopping. Or I couldn't believe what was happening. The original hope was that this was a movie or something like that, since it's long since diminished. But with only that video remaining, I was beginning to fear for my own safety. I locked my door and closed my blinds and pushed onward. I began 006 with this small hope that this woman was still alive and that I could have saved her. The final installment was a horror show began in the bathroom setting. The camera was placed on the counter facing a mirror in which I could see a door. The only supposed sound I could make was familiar sound was that destroyed hopes. Power tools. I sat right in front of the screen what felt like hours before the sound stopped. But the more silence and the heavy footsteps was accompanied by what sounded like something being dragged. The doorknob turned and it was slowly pushed open. Out of the darkness of the rest of the house appeared a middle-aged woman, what I can describe as a lab attire, supporting a respirator with a pair of rubber gloves. For some strange reason, it gave out a small amount of relief. The reflection the woman was struggled to be dragged into something in the bathtub. As she hoisted into the tub, I could see it was a large black garbage bag. I felt like I was dreaming. It felt like I was watching a horror movie. Unfolding the screen, she lifted the bag up from the tub, now empty, except for whatever entrails were still dropped out. She picked up the camera and placed it on the ground, facing the tub. On the floor of the bathtub was a distorted corrosive substance, and several other empty containers. The woman began to dump the liquids into the bathtub, which was followed by an awful noise that I could only describe as pop rocks mixed with coke. The video ended and I was left bewildered and panicked. I finally opened the pictures, and the first one was the picture of the truck. The second was a picture of a girl tied up before she was beaten, and the third one was a corrupted file notice, but maybe that's a good thing. I managed to keep 2 of the pictures before I headed the laptop over to the police. I was reimbursed with my $600 along with the bonus. Apparently, the victim was a young girlfriend of an older woman's ex-husband, and the older woman was arrested almost a year before, but was freed of all charges due to lack of evidence. And the ex-husband was incarcerated, I guess. I guess this was missing a link. I just hope this has solved an unanswered questions, though. I am not sure who the man in the funnel jacket was, or how he got a hold of the laptop, or how he owns the same truck as the murderer. I guess I'll just leave that to the police. Well, that was 07 oh that was 09 that was 09/17/10, a creepypasta written by Bongwatersnowman. What did I think of this story? Well, I honestly thought it was a pretty good story. I mean, this story was honestly a pretty good one, because I did remember hearing Creepypasta Jr. as well as Mr. Creepypasta and a few others have narrated this story, so I thought, you know what, let me give it a go. So, well, I honestly gotta say, this was actually a pretty good story for what it is. I mean, the fact that the person bought the laptop and then manages to look and see all the crazy stuff that the previous person had, I mean, that is pretty something, to be honest. I mean, that's pretty freaky, come to think of it. But I definitely gotta say, it's definitely something that you'll definitely pretty much see at times too. But yeah, I mean, I've seen, worse. I mean, everything being described in it was pretty messed up. Like, it's a really messed up story, but it's still a pretty good one in my opinion. I still find it to be pretty good. So, the grammar of this story was pretty good. And it's more of like a murder mystery kind of thing, but also a bit of horror. But I still find this one to be a pretty good creepypasta. So, I'm not sure if they caught the guy who murdered, who did all this or something. But I guess they'll just have to maybe wait for what the cops say. But, yeah, obviously it's a really awesome story. If I had one thing to say I didn't really care for, that would have to be... Oh, what was that? That would have to be... We don't really know about, why this was all filmed in that. Like, we don't ever understand why those files, were in the hard drive of the laptop when the protagonist bought it. Like, I mean, maybe they just have it there, or maybe they forgot to erase the evidence of it. I'm not sure. But, that's kind of like a explanation. Because if the protagonist saw, that those files were there, which he did, and assumed that maybe the person who owned it previously forgot to get rid of those files or something, that would be at least a lot more believable. If you understand, that's me making sense. But, yeah, like I said again, I mean, despite that, I mean, it was pretty messed up too. So, I mean, yeah, it wasn't shocking too much. But, well, maybe it did shock just a little bit here and there. But it's not as shocking compared to how, Sweet Apple Massacre and other stories like that are. But like I said, I mean, the shocking subject matters can somewhat be left out. But it's an older story, so I'm willing to give it a pass. Because it's like an older story, so, yeah. But anyways, yeah, the grammar's good. I like the sentence structuring. It's pretty neatly well written. So I definitely gotta say, it's a pretty good story. Despite the two minor things, but, or two things I didn't really care for of the story. But other than that, it's still a really good story. So, like I said, to Bongwatersnowman, awesome job with this story. You did a pretty good job. So, I hope you make more stories like this in the future. Or if you have, I really hope to take a look at them someday. So, guess with that being said, this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas. This is just simply my own personal thoughts. So I'm willing to give this story a 8 out of 10. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 because while I can say it was pretty good with the plot and the storyline, the concept in that, The only things I didn't really like about it were the shocking subject matters in it. Well, I mean, there wasn't too many, but it was shocking to say the least. But it didn't go from 1 to 100 like Sweet Apple Massacre, so there's that. Another thing that I really wish could have been, helped is maybe the protagonist, thinks that maybe the person who sold him the laptop probably forgot to erase those evidence or something, or they probably just didn't think of it. I mean, that would be a little believable, but it will still be pretty interesting. But like I said, I mean, if they did that, then it wouldn't be so confusing at that part. But other than that, it was excellent. So anyways, what did you guys personally think of this creepypasta? Did you all enjoy it? Did you all not? Also, what would you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I am the Lion Queen. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you're brand new here to this channel, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.